Warriors, this is the Spartan Underground. And now, your host, James 300 Foster.
Hey friends, it's been a while. Welcome back to the Spartan Underground podcast. This is episode 8 featuring Rickson Gracie Black Belt Henry Akins. I've been fortunate enough to host Henry for a couple of seminars at my academy and developed a friendship with him through that, and I've always been blown away and taken so much away from his techniques and insight into martial arts as a whole. Plus, he shares my love for comic books and comic book movies, which makes him A-OK in my book. So I hope you guys enjoy the podcast. We covered a lot of different topics. I want to take a moment to apologize. The Skype audio on Henry's call, it's a little metallic or robotic sounding. Not much I could do to fix that in post-production. So there's a lot of good information there. You just might have to adjust your volume to compensate for that. And I still think you'll really enjoy everything that we covered. Now let's take a moment to talk about our sponsors. Our featured sponsor for this episode of the podcast is Impact Custom Mouth Guards. Simply the best mouth guards on the market, best I've ever tried. Most jiu-jitsu mouth guards are really bulky and just uncomfortable. And these custom mouth guards, it's one of the thinnest mouth guards you can get that still provides a great level of protection. And you don't even really realize it's in your mouth. They fit so well. You can get a kit sent out to you. You make the molds and send them in. There's a very quick turnaround. In fact, Mrs. 300 just got her impressions made tonight, and we're sending that off after the holiday to get her first custom mouth guard made by them. They're the official mouth guard provider for USA Boxing. They have MMA mouth guards, hockey mouth guards, jiu-jitsu, football, basketball, on and on, whatever you need. So make sure you check them out on impactmouthguards.com and make sure to use the code Spartan10 at checkout to receive 10% off your order. Again, that's Spartan and then 10. So Spartan and then the number 10. Make sure to check them out. Again, that's impactmouthguards.com. At this point, it should go without saying, but I'm going to say it anyway. This episode and every episode of the Spartan Underground podcast is brought to you by our friends and family at Show You Roll, along with Albino and Preto. Simply the best jiu-jitsu gis on the market, along with killer apparel and no-gi gear. Go check them out and make sure you let them know that we sent you their way. So, without any further ado, enjoy the show. What's up, Spartan Warriors? I'm here with a good friend of mine, the legendary Rickson Gracie Black Belt, Henry Akins. How you doing tonight, Henry?
I'm doing awesome, man. Thanks for having me on.
Man, it's just an honor to have you on here. Finally, I've been wanting to have you on the podcast since I started it, so thank you for taking the time tonight to sit down and chat with me a little bit.
Yeah, of course, man. It's nice that we get to finally catch up. You've been super busy yourself, huh?
For sure. Bit busy coaching, competing, traveling, teaching seminars. I know you've been traveling all over the place doing seminars recently too, haven't you?
Yeah, I took the summer off a little bit. I did the cruise with Pedro Sauer, and that was really fun. The Grappler's Escape cruise, and we hit a couple different destinations. But most of the summer I took off, but I'm getting ready to start back up again. So. Yeah, man, I'm just super passionate about sharing jiu-jitsu, so I'm blessed that I get to do it, you know?
Yeah, no doubt. Where was that cruise? Was that the Costa Rica one?
No, so Costa Rica is a camp that I've done the past couple of years, which is in Tamarindo, like a little surf resort. But this cruise we left from, the port was New Orleans, and then we went down to Cozumel, Mexico, then Belize, then on Honduras, and then back.
Wow, that had to be awesome.
Yeah, it was, first time teaching on a cruise. So it was super cool. They had a room for us that was all matted out. I think there were close to 100 people there. to participate in the that were there for the jiu-jitsu, and it was me, Pedro, and Ryan Lazaris and Jeff Curran teaching on the boat.
Isn't it amazing to see how far jiu-jitsu's come to, basically have where it was hard to find a school anywhere to where you're now teaching jiu-jitsu on a cruise liner to 100 people?
It literally blows my mind because I mean, and I was just talking to someone else about this a few days ago. When I first started jujitsu, there was not this possibility at all. It was just me training and super passionate about just learning the art and loving the art and wanting to do it as a job. But there was, the potential to make money was not really there.
Yeah.
And so it's just so awesome to see that people are able to, have success and be successful and financially successful, teaching and doing something that they love. So, you know, it's
Yeah.
super awesome.
Yeah, it's a beautiful thing to see. Along those lines, I think it'd be valuable to kind of explain to the audience a little bit of how you got your start in jiu-jitsu. Did you have knowledge prior to getting into it, or was it something you kind of stumbled into?
Um, I knew about jujitsu before I did it because of the UFC and also the first exposure to jujitsu was Gracie in action, seeing the Gracie in action tapes, and that was like 1990, maybe 1993-ish,
Right.
maybe 92. I saw it a few months before the first UFC. So by when the first UFC happened, I already knew who Hoist was, and I was like, this guy's gonna kill everybody.
That's awesome.
Nobody even knows that this guy's gonna kill everybody,
Yeah.
and it happened. So I was already pretty, and I was doing martial arts before, but I had always understood the effectiveness of grappling because I was going to high school in Oklahoma and all of my friends were wrestlers.
Right.
So, in Oklahoma there's nothing to do but drink and fight. At least back then.
Yeah.
And so these guys were, there's high school sports. So my friends would get in fights and stuff like that. And I saw like, wow, man, these wrestlers who are so small, they're able to take down these big guys, football players, and get on top of them. And once they get on top, it's really hard to win,
Yeah. So
And so
it was already on your radar a little bit then.
yeah, so I had gotten a little bit of exposure to how effective grappling was as a martial art. And so but I wanted to find something that was a little bit more martial art based and not sport based, where wrestling is just a sport. It's all about
Yeah.
just pinning someone. I was looking for something, a martial art. So when saw the first Gracie in action, I was like, I found it. This is what I've been looking for.
So what other styles were you training in prior to getting into Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu?
I did Taekwondo for a while. I did a little bit of Muay Thai. So mostly stand-up striking stuff.
Very cool. So when you first went in, all of your jiu-jitsu experience was under Rickson, correct?
Yeah. So started off as a white belt under Hickson and pretty much went from white to black under him.
Man, that's an amazing thing that not many people can say.
Yeah. A part of me thinks, I guess there's two different ways of looking at it because I know there's a lot of people that bounce around at different schools.
Right.
And so I definitely think that there's value in that, getting exposure to different styles, getting exposure to different techniques and different people's philosophies. But yeah, I'm also really blessed because, I mean, Hickson's the best. And I mean, still by many, he's considered the best ever. And so, um, that was a blessing too, to be able to absorb as much as I could from him.
Absolutely. What was the training environment back in those days? What was the training environment like?
It changed over the years. In the early days, I mean, when we were in the Pico Academy, which is the academy you see in that documentary Choke,
Right.
um, it was we were in a karate studio. We were sharing the space with a karate studio, and it was a tough gym, just like everywhere back in the olden days. It was,
Yeah.
you come in and it's kill or be killed. And everyone was just training hard, and the facility was not a nice, by any standards, like not a nice facility or clean, but it was like kind of an old, dirty, musty gym. But you show up there and you're there to train.
Right.
It kind of reminded me of like an old boxing gym you know. And Hickson was teaching every day at the time, and what was cool too is he was also fighting every year at the time. And so That was really, really awesome to get exposed because, in the early days, that's what everyone got involved in jujitsu for is like, okay, this is an effective form of self-defense. Like you can
Yeah.
use this in a fight, it's effective in a fight. I think that's really what blew everyone's mind is like how effective it was in fighting. And because Rickson was still training and competing in the Valley Tudos and then later the Coliseum, in those earlier years, we got to see it all, train it not only for sport but also for fighting. You know,
So how much of the training back then was gi versus no gi, or was it just something where you guys didn't really worry about, doing one aspect over the other? It was all just kind of getting together and training jujitsu and not putting as much focus on labeling one style or the other.
well, you know what happened? We would train in the gi year round, most of the year, and then in the summers it would all be no gi because the summers it was hot,
Right.
and the idea is people are wearing less clothing, and so we took our jackets off, and so that would happen in the summers, so for about 3 or 4 months. But Hickson's style is very, very non-grip reliant, anyways, and also when Hickson was training for his fights, preparing for his fights, we would go no gi, you
Right.
know.
How many days a week were you training back then?
I was training every single day. So I was
Man.
crazy. I was training 5 to 6 days a week. I would probably usually take a day off, but my friend had mats at his place, and I had some friends that would all get together and we train. So that was nice that I had training partners all the time, or people that I could like grab and pull out on the mats and testings. But um, shortly after I arrived at Hickson's, I got a job as the secretary there. So I was there about 70 hours a week.
Oh wow. So you
Yeah,
were you were
so
really immersed in everything, just jujitsu as a whole.
yeah, that was the plan, is just to 100% dedicate and focus myself to jujitsu. When I moved from Oklahoma to Los Angeles specifically for that.
Right. And did you kind of have a direction that you wanted to go with that? Was it always your dream to, become a black belt and teach jiu-jitsu, or were you more looking to be in it as a martial artist just to be as well-rounded as possible, and it kind of evolved to where it is now through that?
Um, that was something that I had in the back of my mind at the same. I was going to school at the same time. I think I didn't make the real decision to really, okay, jujitsu is what I'm going to do as my career, for maybe 2 or 3 years after I had trained. Because when I first started training jiu-jitsu, who knew if I was gonna? I didn't know if I was gonna be good enough. I didn't know if I was good enough to teach. There was no money in really doing it.
Yeah.
At that time, nobody knew about it. It was still, at that time, it was. I think it was just the first maybe one or two UFCs had happened, and so it was still, semi underground. Um, so yeah, I mean, I didn't know. That was kind of always in the back of my head. At the same time, I was going to school for genetic engineering.
Oh, nice.
Um, yeah,
It's
which is like a
interesting.
huge field
Yeah,
now.
yeah. It's funny how a lot of people, I think it's the way our brains are wired, that will be into, some of these other things along with jujitsu, whether it be some form of art, or I know there's a lot of doctors involved with jujitsu. So I've always found that correlation interesting with the different fields that people were studying to be in prior to getting into jiu-jitsu, or during their jiu-jitsu training, before they branched off and became a jiu-jitsu instructor full time.
Yeah. Well, I mean, jujitsu is besides being a physical challenge, it's such a mental challenge. I think, I heard someone say, but jujitsu requires some of the highest level of thinking. It's almost like chess,
Yeah.
where you're constantly having to analyze and think ahead and have like a whole series mapped out of possibilities of what can happen, you know. Um,
Yeah, and that's a huge part of people not getting bored in training in jiu-jitsu, because you're always thinking and always studying and coming up with new variations of techniques. And I think a lot of that has to do with how much it keeps our minds going and all the unlimited possibilities that there are.
Yeah, and just learning every day, learning every day and constantly, there's so much room to improve and grow, it's crazy. I've been doing it for 21 years and I still feel like, wow, man, there's so much to learn and so much. I was down at Chris Howder's place today, and one of my friends, Jack Toffer, was teaching a seminar down there.
Yeah.
And so I got to hang out with Chris, and he showed me a cool little arm lock, and I was like, man, that's so cool. It's something new, like, oh, okay, now I'm gonna try to. Now it's gonna take me like months to incorporate
Yeah.
it into my arsenal and like figure out how to use it. But I was like, bam, that's an awesome move.
Yeah, and it's
You know?
such a refreshing feeling to be in it as long as we have, over 2 decades of training, and to go in and be hit with something completely new to you. It's such a cool thing. I remember back when I was doing karate and some of the traditional martial arts, you would kind of get to that point where you almost felt like you were stagnating and not really picking up any new techniques. And I honestly can say I've never felt that way with jiu-jitsu.
Yeah, there's so much to learn. It's awesome. It's inspiring for me. You know.
So back in those days, I'm assuming it was big with the people coming in and challenging and wanting to test the effectiveness of jiu-jitsu. So were you ever involved with any of those people coming in and challenging, or do you have any interesting little stories you could tell about maybe someone coming in and challenging Rickson or yourself?
Yeah, we definitely had some of that. By that time, because Rickson was already fighting professionally, he wasn't really taking up any challenges, and the students at the school were doing most of the challenges. So I had a couple matches there at the school. Pretty fun because at the end of the day, that's the thing for me. Like you're training and dedicating so much of your time to it. You want to make sure it works, that you're not wasting your time. You
Yeah,
know.
for sure.
And so I had a couple matches. One of the big one that I tell a lot is this guy that came in. He was like, he said he'd been doing kung fu and ninjutsu for 15 years, and a pretty big muscular guy, probably
Right.
weighed about 185 pounds. And I was like at that time I was about 20 years old, 160 pounds. So anyways, he came in, wanted to fight. We squared up, and immediately I took him down. And he tapped out.
Oh,
And
really? Didn't even
yeah, as
didn't
soon
even
as
give
we
a
hit the ground,
chance.
like, well, no, he like got in some crazy weird stance, and I squared up with him, and immediately I just ran in and clinched with him, took him down. He was like tap tap tap, and then my friend who was running the class, who was a brown belt at the time, Jason goes, no, you're not allowed to tap once he hits the ground. Just like, just because Henry doesn't, is not comfortable fighting standing up,
Yeah,
doesn't mean
yeah.
he's going to tap from the feet. So we went again, and he kind of grazed me coming in. What's funny is I had long hair at the time,
Right.
right? I had kind of long hair like I do now.
Yeah.
And so he grazed me coming in, kind of clipped me, but I still took him down. This time I pounded him a little bit and then got him in an armbar. So afterwards, he was sitting along the wall against the railing, and he was just so depressed. And
Yeah.
I walked up to him, shook his hand, and said, "Hey, man, thanks," and started talking to him a little bit. He's like, "Man," he goes, "I've been doing this for 15 years, been doing all these martial arts, and I always believed that it would work. Your instructor always tells you if the guy does this to you, you're just going to do this, 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 and I always thought that that's how a fight was going to go down." And I was just, at the time that I fought him, I was a white belt. I'd only been training for 2 months,
Right.
and he was like, "I feel like I've wasted 15 years of my life." And
Yeah.
that line hit me so hard. I was like, wow, man, I never want to be like this guy. So I just have to make sure that if I'm training something, that it's really effective. You
Yeah,
know,
yeah, and that you're always keeping an open mind to not being closed off to the knowledge that's out there.
yes, exactly. Not being also not being blinded by just blind faith. Like someone tells you, okay, you do this and it's going to work. You believe them. So I'm a big believer in just testing everything for myself. You say it's going to work. Well, let me test it out. Let me feel it. Let me see for myself and see if it works for me. You know.
I noticed something really cool you posted a couple days ago, that goes along with being open to knowledge like that. I know there's a lot of people that kind of see these different videos on Russian Sistema, and
Hmm.
kind of some of the more out there videos have the impression that there's nothing to it, and that the whole style, is gives the impression that it's fake or something. And I understand you got to train with one of the legit Systema instructors the other day. What was that like for you?
It was super cool. So, what happened was, I had got tagged a couple times on a video that he had done. Like
Right.
people were like, "Oh, check out this bull crap, check out this," and so I watched the video and I was like, "Huh, that's it's a short video clip." I was like, "Huh, that's interesting. It kind of looks a little bit like flowing, kind of like flow rolling, how we do in jujitsu."
Right.
I was like, "That's super interesting," but it kind of looked a little bit. It didn't look practical,
Yeah.
right? Um, and what happened was we have a good mutual friend in common, a guy named Mark Chang, who's also like a lifelong martial artist, trained at the Inosanto Academy for forever, and is really close with Guru Dan and travels around with him and teaches different stuff. So, anyways, hey, I reached out to him. I said, hey, I know you mentioned Martin's name to me before. Dude, I'd love to meet him and see if and just learn a little bit about Sistema. Because
Right.
for me, I'm really open-minded. Like, I think I work with some other really, really high level martial artists, and I'm constantly learning from them and seeing like what ideas and concepts I can take from them and apply to jujitsu. So, anyways, yeah, I got to meet Martin. His name is Martin Wheeler, and funny enough, he has a school with Higa Machado
Oh, okay.
in Beverly Hills. So, and I've known Hegan forever, me and Hegan are old friends, so it was pretty cool. I got to go in there, saw Hegan on the mats. He was actually training Ashton Kutcher at the time,
Oh, that's
you know.
awesome.
Yeah, and so got to meet Ashton and a super, super nice, humble guy. And then, yeah, I got to do some training with Martin. And it was awesome, man. It was super, super cool. Um, we did some stand-up stuff, did some knife stuff. We grappled, rolled around a little bit, and I asked him about those videos, and exactly what I thought. Like he's basically those are just extremely like beginner level training drills to help you kind of develop kind of like relaxation and fluidity and move,
Gotcha.
but
So,
they're not. It's
so
not like
the, so
expressing a
the,
technique.
yeah, yeah. So the outside viewer, without that context, it can appear just to be, some kind of cheeseball thing. But with the
Right.
context of knowing that it's almost more like a flow drill.
Exactly. It's like a flow drill, and so like you see people flowing in jujitsu, you see them flopping around. People voluntarily go to their back and they voluntarily let themselves get mounted, and the person like nobody's holding any position, in jujitsu, and it just looks like you're dancing around someone. And so that's kind of what it was. It's a little bit more, but and the thing is with their system, it's in the hour and a half of what I learned, how much can you learn about an art in an hour and a half? But,
Yeah.
um, one of the things he explained to me is they're constantly looking to move and strike. Where in jujitsu, we're looking to control and submit, right? So it's a very, very different approach to everything that they do. Um, and yeah, I just found it super interesting, super cool. He asked me if he could hit me a couple times and just like with baby hits, from very close range without even loading up, man. He was actually able to deliver some like massive power. I was like, holy crap, man, that's like a baby hit. I wouldn't want
Right.
to get hit like a real hit, He was just like kind of like a tapping me. And so yeah, and I actually learned some stuff. He was showing me some stuff about striking on the ground and some angles that they use and some different positions where they'll, throw strikes. And so I was like, man, this stuff is great because it really applies to MMA, you know.
Yeah. Yeah, that's really cool to have that type of mindset, and it's the kind of mindset that a lot of us preach to our students about jiu-jitsu, about being open to all the aspects of jiu-jitsu. But I think it should go beyond that, and you should really try to experience something for yourself before completely writing it off, like we see so often online. You even see that with and you could go look at a technique video, a completely legit technique shown by a 10-time world champion, and there'll always be comments on there where, oh, that wouldn't work if the guy was resisting and this and that, which, as you know as well as I do, maybe sometimes that's true if maybe it's a white belt showing the technique, but when you have a completely legit person on there showing something and there's people saying that, it's just the closed-mindedness coming into it.
Yeah, and that's the thing like that for me too, it's like I wanted to go experience it for myself. Let me really see for myself what this is about. I'm gonna play with it. I'm gonna, take it upon myself to really educate myself on it. Instead of before you make judgment.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a valuable lesson in all different aspects of life, not only martial arts.
Yeah, so that was a super awesome experience, and it kind of training with him kind of made this light bulb go off in my head about it kind of reinforces thinking. But you saw that Damian Maya fight, right?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. That was awesome.
Carlos Condit, super awesome, right? And after, everybody was like, man, Damian Maya, all the jiu-jitsu guys are cheering on Damian Maya, and like, wow, his jiu-jitsu is amazing. It was like perfect, perfect. Closed the distance without getting hit, got the takedown, mounted, took the back, passed the guard, the back, and finished. But what I think a lot of people don't realize was it was the strike that made a huge difference. And if you listen to Carlos Condit, his uh, post-fight interview, he said he got rocked with a strike from the half guard.
Right.
That when Damian Maya mounted, that's why he turned his back, and so that strike had a huge impact in the match, in
Yeah.
the fight.
Yeah, he was
He's
already
like, man,
already rattled.
yeah, he's like, I know I'm not supposed to give my back, but man, that punch hit me, and then when he mounted, he was like, I didn't want to get hit again,
Yeah.
and so it kind of made me think like, man, how important, kind of refreshed my mind and reinforced like how important it is to train jujitsu, with some realism. Like we do a class at the gym once a week where we do striking, and jujitsu. So from the feet, it's just takedowns, and then once we get to the ground, we can strike. We can use punches, elbows, knees, kicks, and so it just kind of reinforced that, man. That training like that is very, very, very important.
Yeah, always having that in your mind and understanding how the strikes change what we do and the types of positions that we put ourselves in.
Yeah, and the thing is, if you don't train it, you don't know. You
Absolutely.
don't. It's like anything, and I think a lot of people don't have that experience or don't have that opportunity to train with strikes. And so it kind of, when you get into a situation in a fight, one, you're not prepared to deal with strikes, and two, you don't know how to use strikes to your advantage, which is a very valuable tool.
Yeah, it's a huge part of it. Do you feel that you use any of the aspects of your traditional martial arts training that you got prior to being involved with jiu-jitsu? What kind of stayed with you over the years that you kind of have used in your jiu-jitsu? Are there any aspects that you've brought along into your teaching style or your style of jiu-jitsu?
Not so much the Taekwondo because it was very, very sporty. Um, but with the Muay Thai, like how they throw elbows, I use those when I teach Jiu-Jitsu, especially when I'm teaching like the kind of Jiu-Jitsu class with strikes. I talk a lot about using knees and elbows, um, just because as grapplers, we're basically close range fighters.
Yeah.
And for close range fighters, the best tools for us to use are knees and elbows. To punch someone, we have to create a little bit more distance, and a lot of times by creating space, you give the person the opportunity to escape.
Very
And
true.
so, with the knees and elbows, it allows you to stay much closer, still maintain control, and do damage at the same time. And so, yeah, I talk a lot about how to use elbows, to do damage. Plus, elbow, you can hit pretty hard with the elbow and not really hurt yourself. Where sometimes when you're punching with your hand, the bones in your hand are so small. A lot of times you end up punching someone in the head or punching someone in the face, and you break your hand.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, definitely. Do you how do you feel jujitsu like in the what's the biggest respect you believe that jujitsu's changed between when you started to nowadays?
the biggest aspect.
Yeah, the biggest aspect, or in what respect do you feel like it's changed the most over the years between when you started and the state of jujitsu that we're in right now?
It's grown a ton. First of all, it's like crazy. I mean, just here in LA by my school, within like a 2 mile radius, there's 5 or 6 schools, which
Wow,
is not, yeah.
that is
Um,
crazy.
So that's crazy because before, there was like literally less than 10. When I first started, there's probably, less than 10 black belts, maybe a little bit, maybe 10 or maybe a little in all of the United States.
Yeah.
Um, so it's grown a crazy amount. The number of techniques have grown a crazy amount. Um, I think a lot of the jujitsu has evolved for more of a sporting aspect, so that has also increased the number of techniques because when you don't have to worry about punches or strikes, you're allowed to do a lot more. You know.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you feel that the way that jiu-jitsu's involved into more of a sport aspect, do you feel that's benefited jiu-jitsu, or do you think it's hurt certain aspects of jiu-jitsu a little bit?
Um, I think competition is good. People want to test themselves, and people want to, uh, a lot of times by signing up for a competition, it provides people with motivation and inspiration to train.
Yeah.
Uh, but yeah, I think the sport and the martial art are two very different things, you know. And you hear even guys that have transitioned from sport jiu-jitsu to MMA or to fighting have even mentioned that. Like, I think Hodger said somewhere he had a quote where like 30% of his jiu-jitsu actually works for MMA,
Right, when you get the
you know.
striking involved and everything.
Yeah. And so I think for it's different for each individual. Like, we all do jujitsu for different reasons. Some people start jujitsu because they want another activity where they can make friends, or they're signed up because their friends do it. Some people do it to lose weight. Some people do it to learn self-defense. Some people get exercise. Some people, enjoy watching the UFC on TV and want to do it. So I think we all do it for kind of different reasons. So I think at the end of the day, it's, very, very specific to each individual what their purpose is for training.
Right.
For me, it was more, I'm very focused on the martial art aspect of jujitsu. When I first started, that's what it was about, and just training with Rickson and him, fighting all those years, getting to learn that. That's kind of always been first and foremost in my head. That, hey, that first and foremost, this is a martial art for self-defense. You know,
Yeah.
um, and so I kind of stick to those ideas and that philosophy.
Do you have any of your students that compete in some of the sport jiu-jitsu events, or do they mainly kind of stick in it for the self-defense aspect, or are they more MMA oriented?
Um, Both. So we just had a little team of guys that competed at the Gracie Worlds last week, which is basically EBI rules. So
Oh,
it
right.
was, 10 minutes or 15 minutes and submission only. And then at the end, they do like a overtime where they, put you either in the back position or the armbar position, and whoever gets out first.
Yeah, see,
So
those have become my favorite style of tournaments to watch because people are actually going in there and trying to finish, which, in my opinion, that's what jiu-jitsu's all about. We should be trying to, show we're better
yeah,
through actually submitting the person versus, kind of maybe getting more into looking at the scoreboard and waiting for the
right.
time to run out.
Well, no, it's the best. And here's the thing with point-based competition is when we are training in the gym, when we're training, there's no one standing there counting points, and we're
Right.
not paying attention to time. It's just I'm training with my partner, I'm trying to tap him out, and he's trying to tap me out. You
Yep.
know, and so competing, the strategy and the mindset for competing is very, very unnatural to how we train at the academy.
Yeah.
When you train, it's like 5 or 6 minute match. 5 or 6 minutes they put on the clock, or if you're getting ready for a tournament, you'll change the time to fit how you're going to compete. But normally, people are just training. It's 5 or 6 minutes. You slap hands, and then you just roll,
Yeah.
right? And it's see if I can catch you, or let me see if you can catch me. And so you're constantly trying to put each other in danger. You're not just trying to hold and look at time and waiting for time, or seeing if you get an advantage and then not doing anything.
Yeah.
Which is in the point-based system, that's the ideal way to compete.
Right. Right. It can be frustrating, and I think
Yeah.
it.
Well, we were talking before about it.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I think it comes down to more because you go into a tournament knowing the rule constraints that you're competing under, so you kind of knowingly go in there if you sign up. Hopefully you understand the rules and what comes with it, but I think it kind of goes more to the the intention of the competitor. If they're okay with getting ahead and just riding out the clock and using that type of strategy, then you're going to kind of end up with some of the more boring matches that we see. And then you have competitors like Salo and Shanji and Lovato who go in there and go for the kill the whole time and end up finishing a lot of matches. So I think it comes down to a lot on the individual level of the competitor, if they're just happy to win on points versus actually trying to go for the finish.
Sure, but that's the thing, is if you come up against an opponent, even if your intention is to finish, if you come up an opponent with that mindset or strategy, they can make it a very, very boring fight.
Yeah, it can be
You know?
really, really difficult, definitely.
Yeah.
And that's hurt me a few times in the past because I've given up a advantage point. Back in the 2014 Master Worlds, I lost my first match that way. I was ahead, and then I kind of opened things up to try to make something happen, and the person got an advantage, and then the time ran out. So just kind of par for the course, I guess, in that type of format. I really like the EBI rules where they start people in the bad positions, and you actually, most of the time you get to see a finish in the match, which I think is really cool.
Yeah, I hope that more tournaments start to pop up with that rule set, and even gi tournaments, because right now I think it's primarily just no gi tournaments, you know.
Yeah, I haven't really seen too many of the gi. We had one down in Portland here that Chael Sonnen put on
Mhm.
not too long ago, where they adopted EBI rules even for the gi matches, and it was great to watch. Super fun, lots of finishes. So that's
Yeah,
definitely become my favorite format to watch here.
yeah, and I know, like, past few years, one of the reasons that format did come about was because so many people were complaining about how boring the matches were getting. Even when you get to like the biggest tournaments, the highest level tournaments, like the Worlds, and you're so excited to see, some of the guys that are considered the best in the world compete. You're
Right.
so excited for the matches, and a lot of times these matches are the most boring matches to watch, you know?
Yeah, well, it's like you said, if even one of the competitors has that intention, it's going to be, you know, you can be really good at jiu-jitsu, but if the other person is really good at that strategy, it can be hard to overcome.
Yeah.
So, right now, what do you have going on as far as seminars? What do you have coming up?
Wow, I got a bunch of seminars coming up. Next week, I am going to. Where am I going next week? Oh, I'm going to Woodstock, Illinois, to Alpha BJJ. I have a buddy that has a school there, and then the week after, I'm going to be in Philadelphia teaching. I have two different locations in Philly, and then I have a week off, and then I'm in Louisville, Kentucky. Um, and then I think I have another week or two off, and then I will be in, where am I going? Oh, I'm going to be in Denver, and then Oklahoma City, and then Cleveland and Reno.
I
So
didn't I
busy
didn't
next few months.
I didn't hear Seattle anywhere on there.
I know.
I need to get you back out.
I gotta get an invite. You
Yeah,
know,
well, you have an open invite.
appreciate it.
I know how busy you are, though.
Yeah, no, I'd love to come out there, man. Seattle's such a beautiful area. God.
Yeah, it is. It's one of those things where people complain about the rain, but then it's like, guys, don't you realize that's why everything's so green and beautiful?
Yeah.
Because it rains a lot.
It's so lush. Like, I mean, I love LA. Don't get me wrong. I love being here next to the beach, but man, I love the mountains and the trees and just being in nature. And it's so lush and green and beautiful out there. I mean,
Yeah,
there's something about,
it's everywhere around here too. You don't have to drive very far to kind of get away and almost feel like you're in a completely different place, which is really cool.
have you ever heard about forest bathing?
No.
Look it up on YouTube. There's actually a thing where they've done studies about going in nature and being in the trees and like how it affects they've taken people in like 1 hour walks through forest and they did their blood work before and blood work after, and it's pretty crazy. Like it,
Just getting out in nature.
yeah, and just being in nature for a couple hours and how it affects your body, and they say like the effects last up to a month. But
That's
there's
amazing. I think I heard Joe Rogan talk a little bit about that on one of his podcasts a while back.
yeah, it's big in Japan. But I think that's where the term came from, forest bathing. But it's actually really, really cool.
I'm
The health benefits.
definitely gonna look that up. So something I was really excited about, kind of being somebody who has had you out for a couple of seminars and got to benefit from that, was when I saw you started your online training up and have some videos and things that people can get on and actually get exposed to your jiu-jitsu through the internet. So how did that kind of come about? Was that something that you had planned to do, or was it just a matter of kind of, taking advantage of the media platforms that are available nowadays and kind of letting the world get introduced to your jiu-jitsu a little bit more?
You know what's funny is it was something that I was adamantly against for a long, long time.
Yeah,
And
I think the first time you came out, we kind of chatted a little bit, and you were like, "Oh, I don't know if I'm going to do anything like that." So it was cool to see that you did end up doing it, because I think the your jiu-jitsu is so close to the source, and a lot of the techniques kind of have gotten lost in translation over the years, and I think it's something that people need to be taken back to. So it was great to see that your average person is going to be able to get access to that.
yeah, I actually needed a lot of coercion to actually do it. As I started traveling around and teaching, guys, were like, "Man, that seminar was mind blowing," and I kept hearing that, and guys were like, "Man, where can I learn more?" And I'm going to come out to LA, and um, you know, so so much of what I teach is just kind of like the basics, the fundamentals of jiu-jitsu with some details that might make things more effective for people.
Yeah,
Um, and
you do what I call jiu-jitsu that's so basic it's advanced.
yeah. And that's basically Hickson's jujitsu. It's Hickson's style. Like, there's stories of him going into like Baja Gracie. He'd go back to Brazil and train, and he would go through 40 guys and mount them and cross collar choke them, 40 black belts. And just very very simple basic game. And that's kind of what I saw him do too. When we would, like, throughout the years, all the black belts would come in, all the world champions, the current world champions or whatever, and I would watch Hickson train with them. And I mean, he would not do anything fancy. It was just like, it looked like this, man, that's like the same stuff I learned the other day, but how is he able to do it to this black belt and the
Yeah,
guy can't stop it? So I knew there's something there, and he's just put so much time and energy into refining his basics, and so that it works against everybody. And so that was kind of a big thing for me. And as you keep training and you learn the details and you keep refining the basics, you really understand like what helps to make things work, and the different ways people can defend and how you can make tiny adjustments so that they can't use those defenses.
right.
And so that's kind of what I wanted to share. And for a long time I didn't think it was possible to really teach it, until I had someone say, "Hey, listen, what you have to teach has a lot of value, and even if it's never going to be the same as me teaching someone one-on-one in person, because
Right.
so much of it has to be felt,
Yeah, a
like
lot of it is feel, and
mhm,
a lot of it is understanding the timing too, which is kind of a little bit hard to translate on video. But I definitely
right.
think it's a good supplement to your jujitsu for people to be able to see it, and then maybe they're going to get that exposure and seek out one of your seminars and get to train with you in person or come to your academy.
Exactly. And you know what? So I started it, and since I've launched it, I think it's been 8 months now. Man, I've had so many people writing in, like sending me emails, sending me messages about how much it's helped them and how much it's helped their game and different aspects of their game. And that's what really like makes my day, is to get these messages from guys that are white belts. There's like, or blue belts, and guys like, oh man, I used to get smashed all the time. Now nobody can hold me in the cross side position, or I used to get thrown off the mount all the time. Now I'm able to hold mount, and people can't get me off, and they don't know what I'm doing. Just to hear those messages is like, wow, man, it's serving its purpose.
Yeah,
I'm
makes it all worth it, doesn't it?
yeah, and it's those messages that really is like, wow, okay, this is really having a positive effect. It's really, helping people and serving people in the way that I would hope it would.
What do you feel kind of caused jujitsu to stray a little bit from the source, from the jujitsu that you came up with? And do you think it's just I know we had talked before, you said it was a little bit like the telephone game where one person hears one thing, and then as you pass it down the line, it changes, and it kind of happens that way with maybe how a technique starts and how it evolves. How do you feel jiu-jitsu, or why do you feel jiu-jitsu has kind of strayed so much from the jiu-jitsu you came up with?
Yeah, I think that's a huge part of it, you know, is that kind of telephone game. And especially in the early days, um, when most of the guys that were amazing at jiu-jitsu, they're all Brazilians, and they come over and they didn't speak good English, but they knew they could make a living. They knew they could make and have a better life in the United States than in Brazil teaching jiu-jitsu. So they came over here and started teaching. And so even though they weren't able to articulate things extremely well, they're just like, do this, and then you do this, and then you do this.
Right.
So you kind of you don't really understand. You see what they're doing, and like a lot of times in a class, you basically try to emulate the instructor by what you see. But so much of learning is, especially jujitsu, is kinesthetic,
Yeah.
you know. And if you can't articulate those things, those little details, it's going to be lost in the translation. People are going to see kind of the big movements and the more dramatic movements, but you don't get to see kind of the subtleties of each technique. And I was really, really fortunate that I got to train so much with Rickson one-on-one. And so besides, he's, and by the way, he's a phenomenal teacher. He's like, his depth of and level of understanding of jiu-jitsu is like, incredible. Um, but getting to experience it one-on-one with him, it would just gave me a whole different level of understanding,
Well, and you would have that, I mean, you would actually get to feel it too.
Exactly.
Getting to train one-on-one with him, you're not only, watching him show it, you're getting to feel the techniques, which is, I mean, that's invaluable, invaluable
Right.
experience that you were able to, that you were very blessed to have. So that's really cool. That's not
Yeah.
something a lot of people can say.
No, and also, as I became one of the instructors at the school, and even in the earlier years, I was very, very close with his son Hoxton, and so we were always, I always had Hickson's eye on me, always trying to help me, and he put a lot of time and effort into me, and I'm so grateful for all the attention that I was given. Um, and so that, of course, also seeing that I was working at the academy and doing fights at the academy, so that all of my instructors put a lot into me, and so I'm just trying to do my best to repay that, and pass on and share what I learned.
Yeah, that's amazing. Very cool. So I get this question a lot from brand new people. What do you think is the most important aspect of jiu-jitsu that a beginner should focus on when they first come in with no prior jiu-jitsu experience? What do you think the main focus of their jiu-jitsu game should be?
um Main focus of their jiu-jitsu game, I mean, there's a couple of things. I mean, I think the first thing in jiu-jitsu, that if you're trying to learn like an idea, is how to stay safe,
Right.
you know, how to be comfortable and stay safe and survive. That's kind of the first thing anyone needs to learn. Um, Also a huge thing, and you hear it all the time, is try to not use strength, you know, try to not muscle or use strength. I think that's another huge thing, because even though it doesn't pay dividends in the beginning, in the end, it starts paying off huge.
That's a really tricky one, especially for the bigger, stronger guys that come in, is getting them to put themselves in those positions where they're not really, using their physical attributes. Do you have any tricks that you like to use with your guys when they come in that makes them kind of not use as much strength?
A lot of times what I try to do is I try to roll with them and show them how effective you can be without using strength.
Right.
The other thing is I tell them, I said, listen, if this is how you're going to train, this is how your jiu-jitsu is going to be, you know?
Yeah.
So if you're just going to muscle and power all the time, you're never going to be able to develop that relaxed, smooth game. So try to train, and I, you know, it's a big ego thing because people are more concerned with winning
Oh,
and not getting tapped
absolutely.
out than learning. And
Yeah.
I always try to pound that into my students. It's like, tapping out is part of the learning process. It doesn't mean anything's wrong with you or that you're bad. It's part of the learning process. And a lot of times you learn a lot more when you tap than when you win. And
Definitely.
so, let go, it's a lot of letting go of the ego, and it's not a big deal if you tap, you know. Um, you're there to learn and improve yourself. And you're not going to improve yourself by out muscling or out powering people.
Yeah, that only is going to work until you come up against somebody bigger and stronger than you.
Exactly.
And then you re-
Or
then
when
you
you
re-
get
then you realize how little jiu-jitsu you actually have when that
Right.
happens.
Well, the other problem with that is these guys gas out really quick because
Yeah.
they're using so much strength and power. And so really you go hard for like 10 minutes and then they're done, you know?
Yep.
And so that conserving the strength, conserving their energy so that if they need to survive for longer, they can survive.
Do you teach women any differently than you teach men as far as their technique, or is everybody your approach to teaching everybody the same? As usually women they don't have to worry as much about being stronger than everybody and not having to use their strength. They're more having to worry about kind of being the one who's getting muscled around by the bigger, stronger people. So do you kind of change your approach in any way with them, or is your jiu-jitsu kind of straight
You know what?
across the board the same?
Yeah, not really. So we don't have I don't have a women's specific class. One of the things I do focus on, like I do a self-defense class every week, which is basically just the jujitsu, like the stand up and the ground techniques that are all self defense based,
Right.
not like competition or sport based. And but mostly all of my techniques are very, very simple. I always try to focus on things that don't use strength or you don't have to muscle, that work for every body type, that you don't have to be super, super flexible to do, or you don't have to be super fast or agile. So I try to focus on techniques, and also, techniques that are not grip reliant. That's a big thing for me too.
Yeah, not having to have the gi at all times to have effective jiu-jitsu.
Right. Well, especially here in LA because I mean, it's beach weather almost year round. So people are in t-shirts and shorts most of the year.
Yeah. Yeah, you don't have too many people wearing coats down there or hoodies.
No, that's the thing is even in the winter, I mean, people put on a light hoodie at most. You know.
Yeah. So, what part of California is your school located in? Are you in California, like LA area, or?
Yeah, so we're right on the border of pretty much Santa Monica and West LA.
Okay. And are you open to visitors dropping in your academy? I know
Oh yeah,
everywhere kind of has different policies on that, but I'm sure a lot of people hearing this are going to want to come down and train with you.
yeah, 100%. We're super welcoming and inviting to everyone. I think everybody that trains jiu-jitsu, we're all one big family. We are all people that are passionate about the same art. It's such a beneficial thing to learn. And I believe martial arts is basically all about self-improvement.
Yeah, I agree, 100%. Why do you think we don't see? I mean, jiu-jitsu can kind of be a little closed off as far as some academies don't want people, cross training or going and visiting other academies. What do you think that stems from, and how does that? I mean,
Old school mentality.
yeah, it's kind of it's that old school vibe, isn't it? It's
It's
the
old school mentality, and it was mentality that was passed on from, that word crayonche
yeah.
that used to get thrown around all the time, like you're a traitor or you went to someone else's school, now you're not, you don't have any loyalty. Um, so, it comes from that, which is very, very kind of tribalish mentality, you know. For me as an instructor, I want the best for my students. And, so we have an open mat every Sunday at the school, which is from 2 to 4. And people from, there's no fee at all. And people from any school are welcome to come and train. And I think that's great for my students to go out and train with it. And I encourage them anytime they're traveling, please go out and train it. Or they'll ask me, hey, I'm going here. Where do you think I should train? I always try to, give them a school to train at. But I think it's really important that they cross train,
Yeah.
because you get exposed to different styles, you get exposed to different kind of ideas and concepts, and it's important for them to have that exposure.
Yeah, for sure. And I think it just makes jujitsu as a whole grow. And and we can all benefit from working with each other and learning from each other. It's like we were talking earlier about being open to the other styles of martial arts. Um, I used to think, because my academy's real open like that as well, and when I started traveling and teaching more seminars, I started to realize how much it's still not like that. There's still places out
Yeah,
there. There's still places out there that are real closed off. Like, oh, people from this other school won't come to your seminar because their instructor doesn't allow them to go to other schools. And
yeah, I've had a lot of that experience.
yeah, isn't that funny? You kind of scratch your head and go, man, what's the deal with that? But it does still
Yeah,
exist out there. I think a lot of it, like you said, is that old school mentality, and it kind of goes back to that old saying of everything comes down from the top. It's like if
yeah.
they were kind of brought up that way, or their instructor was that way with them, that's kind of how they approach it with their students.
And some of it, I think some of that may be ego too. Instructors' ego, like, oh, you know what, you're gonna go learn. You think this other instructor is better than me, or you think that they can teach you something that I can't, or I'm not good enough. That's why you have to go somewhere else. So it kind of comes from a little bit of that
Yeah,
mentality.
yeah,
So
or they're not confident in what they're not as confident in their jujitsu, so they're worried maybe they're gonna lose a student if they go somewhere else
yeah,
and like the technique more, or like the training environment more. So I think you're right. I
yeah.
think it goes a lot back to maybe insecurity and ego.
Yeah. And I tell my guys, I'm like, man, I do not, it is impossible for anyone to know everything about jujitsu. I mean, even Rickson is still constantly learning and changing his jujitsu and making adjustments. Um, so I'm like, man, please go out there and train at other places and learn as much as you can and bring it back and share it with me so that I can learn too and we can try other things out. And I always ask people, like, like I said today, I went to Chris Howder's today because I had a friend, Jack Toffer, teaching. So I went there as a student to learn. And even though I teach Jack a lot, like, we've done a lot of privates together, but, for me, there's always a potential you can learn from anyone.
Yeah,
You know,
definitely. I think it's just
I've learned stuff from my students all the time. Sometimes they figure something out in class, they do a move, and it starts working for them, and they start having a high level of success with it. And they'll show it to me. I'm like, wow, that's actually a really cool move, and yeah, it works. I've never seen that before. It's just something they figured out from rolling.
yep, yeah. Keith Owen calls that approaching jujitsu with a child's mind. It's like little kids are real open to learning. You kind of show them something and they don't have any, they don't really question it. They just kind of do it. And
Yeah.
I think as adults, maybe we get a little more, some individuals get a little more closed off, and, we have all these other things in place that maybe keep us from learning to our full potential.
Yeah. Well, just that idea that and the realization, I think, for any instructor is that it is impossible to, you know, in one lifetime to learn all the jiu-jitsu out there. So it doesn't make you a bad person because you don't know something. It doesn't mean your jiu-jitsu is horrible, but just recognize, like, hey, you're doing your students a disservice and hampering their growth by, being political, you know.
Yeah, for sure. It's one of those things where it's up to the instructors out there, and it's up to the people in positions of influence in the jiu-jitsu community to kind of let people know that's okay. It's okay to admit you don't know everything and that you're still learning as well.
Yeah.
I'll be the first one to admit, well, a lot of times when I go to one of Saulo Ibero's seminars, there'll be something he shows that just kind of makes me feel like I'm a white belt again. It's like,
Yeah.
man, that's so simple. How didn't I know that? I've been doing jiu-jitsu over 20 years. How did I not know that?
Yeah, totally, right?
But
I love that feeling.
yeah, exactly. For guys like us that have been around it for so long, that's like refreshing to feel that way. It's not a bad thing.
Yeah. No, first and foremost, like, I'm a teacher now, but my primary passion is being a student. Like, I love learning. I love, I was first a student and always will be a student.
Well, that's a great passion to have and a great attitude to have going into, you know, continuing our journey in jiu-jitsu. Now,
Yeah.
I'm going to completely switch gears on you here. What's the last comic book movie you saw? Because I know you share my love of comic books and comic book movies.
Ooh, I've been bad, man. I'm dying to see Suicide Squad. Haven't seen Suicide Squad yet.
Oh, man,
Uh,
I was hoping we could talk about that one.
I know, man. I'm super bummed, and I keep like, oh man, I gotta see it. I gotta see it before it leaves theaters. What was the last? You know what? I just got done watching was Daredevil season 2.
Oh, yeah.
Punisher. Oh my gosh,
Wasn't that
dude.
good?
They did such an awesome job with the Punisher.
So,
I'm like, yes,
yeah.
they got it right.
Yeah, he was perfect. And
Yeah.
he actually trains jiu-jitsu too, I found out.
Oh,
So,
no way.
yeah, so I was at Emerald City Comic Con in Seattle this last, I think it was last April, and one of my friends works security there, and I had gone up to where all the celebrities were, and he's like, man, you just missed John Bernthal, the guy that played the Punisher, and he goes, man, he's really into jiu-jitsu. I would have taken you over and introduced you to him if you would have come a little earlier. And I was so
Wow.
I was so bummed. He said he was like wanting to train while he was in town and everything. So
How crazy and how cool is that so many people train jiu-jitsu? It's like so many celebrities train
yeah,
jiu-jitsu,
yeah, it's
you know?
just seems like every day that's it's. I know Hegan has a lot of them too. I always see his posts. He's got a lot of celebrities training with him, which is just really awesome to see.
Yeah, super cool, right? Like, I walked in and he was actually giving you always hear him like, oh, he trains Ashton Kutcher. And I actually walked into Martin's place, the place they showed together, and oh, there's Ashton Kutcher on the mat training
Yeah,
with him. It was pretty cool, and then, Anthony Bourdain, and it's just like a who's who list of celebrities training
yeah.
now. It's so cool that so many people are into it.
So did you see the trailer for the Luke Cage series that's coming out?
Yeah, I did. That and Iron Fist.
Yep, Iron
So,
Fist, and then they're gonna do the
Defender.
Defenders. Yep.
Yeah. I'm super stoked. I haven't seen the Jessica Jones. Did you watch Jessica Jones series?
Yeah, Jessica Jones was great too. So
It was good.
yeah, it was
Okay.
really good, and that's where they introduced Luke Cage. So
Right.
he's in that.
So I watched like the first 2 or 3 episodes, and it's super dark.
Yeah,
But I watched the first 2 episodes. I'm like, man, I'm not really getting into this.
yeah.
But
Give
maybe
it
I
a
gotta watch a little bit
yeah. It
more.
started out a little slow and really
Uh,
picked up. I think you'll dig it if you stick with it,
okay.
because
Yeah, I gotta watch this of
yeah,
it.
it basically takes place between season 1 and season 2 of Daredevil. So
Ah, okay.
kind of ties a couple little things in.
Oh, super cool. All right. Well, then that's what I'll be doing tonight.
Yeah, there you go. Did you? Oh, man, did you watch Stranger Things on Netflix?
No, I haven't seen it yet.
Oh
Man,
man,
what's crazy
dude.
is I just got Netflix literally like a month ago. Um, and I just started kind of like I have so little time to watch TV just because I'm
Yeah,
so busy with so many other.
I'm the same way. But when I do, I sit on there and I'll like watch a whole season in 2 days.
Yeah. So now like I got a couple things on my list. I read a lot too, and I listen to audiobooks. That's like a big thing for me. I listen to so many audiobooks,
Yeah,
you know.
I'm the same. I got so many books on Audible. I listen to a ton of audiobooks on there, and but you gotta watch Stranger Things. That's like
Okay.
it's based in the '80s, so there's a lot of cool references that you'll get, and
Oh, awesome.
lot of comic book references and stuff. It's a sci-fi type thing. The best way I could describe it is it's almost like if you blended X-Files and the Goonies. It's kind of like that. So
Oh my gosh! All right, so then I gotta watch it. The Goonies is
yeah,
like I must have watched Goonies probably when I was a kid, probably 70 times.
yeah, you'll dig it. It follows these little kids, this group of friends, these kids, and kind of has an alien monster element to it, and sci-fi. So yeah, it's great. You'll probably sit there and watch the whole season.
Oh, awesome.
Well, my friend, we're coming to the end of the podcast here. How can people get more info about your upcoming seminars and keep track of where you're going to be?
So I post all my information on my Hidden Jiu-Jitsu site, so www.hiddenjujitsu.com, or if they want to friend me on Facebook, or I have a fan page on Facebook too that they can follow me on. So yeah, those are probably the easiest ways to
Very
find out all
cool.
the
And
stuff.
that's where hiddenjujitsu.com is, where also you have all the instructional videos and everything, right?
Yep, it is. And I last year I did like a little East Coast tour and did I think 14 seminars along the East Coast in like a couple weeks. And so I have all of that content coming out, and yeah, I'm just super excited. I got 3 more modules coming out within the next few weeks. So super pumped to be releasing a lot of new information.
So what you're saying is my bank account's going to be hurting here when those get released. That's awesome. I love the stuff that you've done so far, so I'll definitely be checking those out.
Awesome. Thanks, James.
Awesome, my friend. Well, thank you for taking the time to be on here with me tonight.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thanks for having me on, man. And we definitely gotta make it happen. I'll come up to Seattle again. I love hanging out up there.
Yes, sir. We'll hook it up here soon. And
Okay.
you enjoy the rest of the Labor Day weekend.
All right. Thanks, brother.
All
Stay
right.
safe.
You too.
All right.
Take
Bye.
care.